Hey, Maddie, welcome to the Modern Marketing Podcast. Super excited to have you joining me here today.
Dude, I am stoked to be here with you today. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, we were just talking right before the show, and it looks a lot brighter where you are than where I am up here. And I understand you're just down the coast a little bit in Sacramento.
Yes, yeah. We were kind of joking around. You were in the dungeon and throwing on some lights and
That's
seeing if
it.
they worked or not, and
That's it. And it did not work. That was the
it didn't
takeaway.
work.
It
Hey,
didn't
you're
work.
still looking good, man.
That's
It's all
I
good.
appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yeah, we're just up here in Vancouver, so a little bit up the coast. A bit of a
I was
temperature
just in
change.
Whistler.
Were you? No kidding.
Yeah, so I
Awesome.
went through Vancouver. We flew into
Yeah.
Vancouver, and dude, I was blown away by how awesome of a city Vancouver is.
It's a killer city. Like, I mean, pretty much everywhere around Vancouver, Vancouver Island, where I spend most of the time, Whistler, like that whole sort of area is just, yeah, it's pretty cool.
Epic.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So, what were you doing in Whistler? Get some snowboarding in?
I was there with my mastermind group. So it's a millionaire mastermind group
Yeah,
called GoBundance.
yeah,
And we were up there for our annual winter mastermind where basically 150 millionaires get together and we mastermind on really 6 pillars.
yeah,
So we focus on financial freedom, not just having one vertical income stream, but having multiple horizontal income streams. So you can obviously have those passive, opportunities to have the financial freedom and flexibility to do what you want, when you want, with who you want.
yeah,
The second one is, yeah, it's great to make a lot of money, but it's also extremely important to give it back and
yeah,
to contribute. So the second pillar is genuine contribution. The third one is extreme accountability. So we share our financials, our goals, basically just transparency
yeah,
and making sure that, it's you are being authentic and genuine with the group and yourself.
yeah,
The fourth one is, it's great to make money. It's great to give it away. It's great to hold each other accountable to goals, but without your health, none of that really matters. So
yeah,
age-defying health is the fourth pillar. The fifth is authentic relationships. So we all want to be, better men, better husbands, better business leaders, community members, and just all around human beings. And the last one is, hey, why not have some fun? So bucket list adventures. So we do all of our events, our masterminds in some kind of, destination where we can play all day, mastermind in the evening. So I bobsledded, which was freaking awesome.
right on.
On the track, that was cool. We
Yeah,
bungee jumped, snowmobiling. Some guys did heli skiing. I mean, Whistler is just a freaking playground.
it
So
is.
it was awesome.
Oh, that is wicked. Yeah, no, Whistler is an absolutely amazing playground. I mean, I've heard you talk about the GoBundance group before on the Millionaire Mindcast there. And yeah, I mean, it sounds amazing. The pillars, what's really cool is that you mentioned authentic twice, right? Like that seems to be the core, which is kind of sort of the theme that we've been seeing marketing going in. We've been seeing business going in is this massive shift towards more authentic, more transparent. You mentioned that as
Yep.
well. So yeah, maybe you want to riff on that a bit. I mean, it's such a core principle with sort of, especially with GoBundance, like you've mentioned about, but I'm sure that you've obviously incorporated that into your business and your life. So
Yeah, I mean, just in general, I think, and I can only speak for myself and what my appetite is for engagement with an individual or a brand or an experience. Like, I don't want this veneer over things or this facade. I
yeah,
want to know like the real Adam, right?
yeah,
Or I want to know the real individual or the real brand and all of these smoking mirrors and, if we're going to talk about marketing, right? Like the clickbait and all
yeah,
these different things, people are getting wise about this. And it's really something I see a lot of intelligent brands shifting away from
hmm,
because at the end of the day, people want to do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And, if they don't feel like they're getting that, then there is going to be an arm's length transaction where they're going to keep you at a distance. And in order to really build rapport and engage with your core client or your core avatar, transparency and authenticity is by far the most relatable thing to individuals that are looking for that.
yeah,
And I think when it comes to buying and selling, whatever, context we're talking about that in, I know personally myself, I find myself marketing in a way that I like to be marketed to.
yeah,
And for me, I like engaging with individuals and brands that are, kind of my flavor, which is just being genuine, being authentic,
yeah,
being transparent. And whether you like it or not, at least you know what you're getting and you can come to the decision of if that fits, your criteria for a, buying decision or a relationship or, an experience or whatever it may be. So
yeah.
I've found that that's kind of the way I personally am taking my brand and some of the stuff we're doing because I want to attract those kind of people. I want to do business with those kind of people. I want to share experiences with those kind of people that are, that relate to that kind of approach to things.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, not only does that help you sort of attract the right people, but it also puts off the wrong people. So, I mean, that's kind of the other half of the puzzle, right? Like, you need to get the right people, but at the same time, it's okay to say like, hey, I'm not for you. Like, this clearly, we're not going to click here. So
that's a good point. It's a magnet for the people you want to attract, and it can be a deterrent for the ones that you don't want to do business with. So I think that's a good point to highlight.
Yeah. So I think this segues nicely then into sort of, have you always known this, or let's go over your path of business. Like what brought you to where you are today? What are some of the lessons you've learned, and go from there?
Yeah, well, I've been in the space of real estate sales, real estate investments, now in the space of podcasting and online education. And I know starting out for me, kind of going back to a little bit of my story, I found myself in some trouble early on as a teenager and in my early 20s. And I was almost like ashamed to kind of share my story.
Yeah.
When I got to this space, I read the book, The Gift of Imperfections by Brene Brown.
Yeah.
And it kind of helped me move through this space of shame. And I'm just talking in the context of personal experience.
Yeah.
This has nothing to do with business at the moment. And I was ashamed of the past decisions I'd made, the past outcomes and results my decisions and choices had led me to.
Yeah.
And when I decided to make a big shift in my life and go in a different direction, I became much more intentional and aware and really comfortable with who I was. And I almost got into a space of embracing this authenticity and this, genuine approach to life. And instead of kind of sweeping it under the rug or thinking that I needed to act a certain way or talk a certain way or be a certain way in order to get what I wanted in life, and just became the organic Matt, the true Matt.
Yeah.
I started realizing that all of the experiences and the relationships and the opportunities that came into my life were mirroring my authenticity.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of a light bulb moment where it was like, okay, well, if this is how it is in my life, then what about the brand and the culture of my brand and the identity of my brand do I want to put out there? Well, I want it to be organic. I want it to be in alignment with who I am. Now that's not going to work for everybody, but when I got into this space of acceptance and saying, okay, if I'm going to do this in my personal life, then why the heck wouldn't I do it in my business life? And I married those two in that approach. It allowed me to essentially start building a company with a brand and a culture and a vision, and everything else that was integrated into that world as just authentic and transparent. Yeah. And I think most people, they relate to that, right? And whether they're doing that themselves or not, they want to.
Yeah.
And so that was a kind of a big shift for me as I started growing my companies and now being in the online space and doing the podcasting. It's been affirmed to me through either my clients or the people that do business with our companies, that's one of the things that they love. They just love that we're approachable, relatable, whether it's the good, bad, or the ugly. We're not afraid to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people desire and crave is, just an authenticity that sometimes society or individuals or spaces don't necessarily give us permission to do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And aside from that, I mean, obviously you're going to have such great benefits. The customers are going to respond better. The clients are going to respond better, but it's also easier, right? Like you don't need to constantly be like, what should we be? How should we act? What should we say? You're like, no,
just being you.
Just be you. Yeah. Just infinitely easier. And I think that's sort of one of the biggest shockers that a lot of my clients have experienced in the past is like, oh, what do you mean? Like I can do this, imperfections and all, and be honest and let people know. And then, business just skyrockets, right? I mean, it's just such an easier way to do it, and you don't constantly have to run things through like through different departments and get all the approvals, and it just becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, I think there's a relatability factor that I like to work in there as well, that when people can relate to you, immediately like 3 or 4 barriers to moving them in a direction that you would desire to move them in a direction.
Yeah.
If you were to do some, psychological warfare
Yeah.
in this marketing space that
Yeah.
so many people, this is like, it's an old mentality of like, I need to trick this individual into resonating with me and to, engaging with me, and then moving them through this milestone and that milestone, which is closer to them becoming a dollar, a piece of revenue for our income model. And I found that, almost the organic process is just that. It's organic and it's easy, and they move themselves without you having to necessarily move the needle. So the organics approach, the authentic approach to business, I think, is especially for, younger generations, millennials like us, and now being the biggest, age demographic in the world, and moving into being the most, largely equipped group of purchasing power now. As that continues to go on, the ones that are not necessarily, taking that approach, I think will find challenges, and they'll either be forced to conform to this, hey, bear it all or get out of the way kind of thing. Because the ones that are I think the most relatable, and people are responding well to that based on the results that we're seeing.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point you brought up there, is that it is based on the results that we're seeing, is that this isn't it's not lip service. It's not just a theory. It's proving itself time and time again that the people that are going out there and putting themselves out there through anything, right? Like through a blog, a podcast, a live stream, a video, whatever they're doing. If you're just putting yourself out there, I mean, it's in marketing, it's kind of like low-hanging fruit. I mean, there's these opportunities right now to go out there and to build your brand and to build your awareness like we've never seen before. And I don't want to say it's easy, but it's easier than it's ever been, right? Like it's there for the taking.
Yeah, it's well said. I think over time too, we'll just see it continue to exponentially compound and grow.
Yeah.
And the brands that are almost like the glass door.
Yeah.
The businesses that are almost like the glass door. I mean, when there's no place to hide, people like to see what they're going to get, right?
Yeah.
So when it's like, hey, what do you want behind you? Curtain number 1 or curtain number 2? It's like, I don't know what's behind either. Whereas it's like, hey, here's curtain 1 and curtain 2. You can see what's behind them. Which one do you like better? Yeah. People are naturally going to be more engaged with those companies versus the ones where they feel like, there's something else to be uncovered that they can't put their finger on. I mean, I think of it as like a relationship, right? Mm. Like when you go, and I think we've all had this experience when you meet a friend and they may not even be a friend yet. They're a stranger and you have a good conversation with them. You're like, man, that guy or that gal, they were awesome. Yeah. Like I felt something there. There was a good connection. And then the more you get to know them, you realize like, hey, that's who they are.
Yeah.
That's that individual, and they're great through and through. And then you meet somebody, and you're like, I just can't put my finger on that person. Yeah. Like I think I like them. I'm not sure I do, but there's just something I can't put my finger on. That's the way I look at like the initial engagement with a lot of brands, right? Like when you see a brand, you're like, whoa, that resonates with me. I like their mission. I like their message. The leaders of the group, their outbound marketing, their inbound marketing, whatever it may be. I like this, right? Like you get that gut feeling. And then there's the brands where you're like, yeah, it seems like a good service, but I just don't know if this resonates with me through and through. So I look at that as, kind of being like the transparency factor of there's that initial gut feeling that people get when they engage with you. And oftentimes I'm a big believer that, don't just listen to your gut, obey your gut. Yeah. And when you have that feeling, whether it's a good or a bad one, trust it and move in that direction. Yeah.
That's such good advice. I think every time, if I look back, obviously hindsight being 2020, but every time I was like, you get that gut feeling and you're like, nah, I can outthink it. Like I'm smarter than my gut. I can just do it. It never works. Yep. I mean, it always blows up in my face. So to trust on it. And I think the other thing there is that it's the alignment, right? Like the alignment between, and that we're coming back to that authenticity. It's like when that message is in alignment with who they are and who the company is, and everything sort of mirrors and echoes that, just a lot easier. And you don't give people that weird feeling that they can't really figure you out or they don't really know about your business. And again, any of that uncertainty is just like distrust all over the place, right? It immediately puts up the walls and says, I'm going to wait. Like maybe I'll look for someone else or something else.
Yep. And people nowadays, right, being that there's this access to information and the world is moving so quickly, you really have a very small window to make that good first impression, right? So if that initial feeling isn't warm and fuzzy and they're ready to rock and roll with you, then it's probably the opposite, right? If they're questioning it or they feel off put, you have very little time to get that brand engagement with your potential client. And if you miss that opportunity, that you're missing money, you're missing revenue at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's huge, right? That first impression is so important. I mean, we've always heard about it in personal relationships, but just as applicable in business, right? Like if you're putting out the wrong message or the wrong image, and if it's, I guess the point that I really want to make and really want to stress on is that if it's intentional, then that's fine. You can put off the people you don't want to, but if you're not really aware of it and you're not sure and you haven't put much thought into it, that's terrifying, right? Like you're putting people off you may not want to put off. You're sending out a message you may not want to send off. So yeah, sort of recenter there in authenticity again.
Yep. And I think too, a lot of that goes back to just clarity in who you're serving.
Yeah.
Right. I think a lot of people are lacking clarity in what their mission is, for one, and then two, what the execution of their brand message is. And that was one of the things that I struggled with too. It's hard to, one, you want to serve as many people as you possibly can, but then at the same time you want to niche down and serve one particular individual or identity at the highest possible level that you can. So going back to what that core vision, I call it the MVVBP, which is your mission, your vision, your values, beliefs, and perspectives. So when you kind of have those 5 things dialed in and really narrowed down and honed in, you can almost turn those 5 things into one core sentence, which is your elevator pitch. So anytime you meet somebody, you have a clear message of what you're going to deliver to them, why it's important to you to deliver it to them in that way, right? So you can really connect with an individual at the core when you have clarity on what exactly that statement is for your own brand or your own company.
That's awesome. I'm gonna put that in the show notes, but run it by me one more time. That's NVVBP, and it stands for?
It's a M, so it's M. Mission.
Okay.
Mission for M, vision, values, beliefs, and perspectives.
Awesome. MVVBP. Cool. That's going in the show notes.
Yeah, say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. So that's a good segue then into the podcast, because obviously the podcast, that's how I first got introduced to you. Been following that for a long time. It's awesome. That's part of my routine now. So that one goes on.
Nice.
Such great insight. Obviously it's seen such great growth, which it's of course well deserved. What's the foundations of what made the podcast grow so well?
Well, first and foremost, it all started from just wanting to add value.
Yeah.
So I didn't go into it with the intention of, hey, I'm going to make money.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to turn this into a massive business. It was just like a passion project for me. And but anytime, I'm sure all of us go into something, we don't go into it going like, I want this to be mediocre and I'm just going to put it out there, right? Like I went into it with the intention of like, I want this to be a badass podcast. I want it to be great. I want it to be top notch. I want to add as much value as I can, but I also want to execute on, the models that other individuals who are operating and performing at a really high level are doing in the podcasting space. So when it came to that, I hired a kind of like a consultant who she had a podcast. I met her at a conference and told her what I wanted to do. She said she'd be willing to help.
Cool.
So I've always been one of those believers that, I'm not I've never been the fastest, the strongest, the biggest, but I'm really good at modeling after other people who are and adding in my own flavor to where it meets, my best strengths, my superpowers.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I did with this. And when I was starting out, I just made a list of individuals and audiences that were in alignment that could complement, whether it was me adding value. I was looking at like, hey, how can my mission and my brand and the stuff that I'm doing add value to other audiences and other, communities and stuff like that. So that was what allowed me to kind of leverage a lot of, those relationships and those authority figures to bring some more eyes and ears to what I was doing. And by making sure that, when those showed up, I was adding value and it was a polished product that I was able to capitalize on that. And
cool.
So that was a big one that allowed me to kind of gain some traction. and then just the power of networking. I mean,
Yep.
it's been great. Like I just got randomly, someone sent me an article a couple days ago saying, hey, you're rated top 26, number 9 on the top 26 podcasts, like ahead of, Tim Ferriss and like a couple other people that I've idolized. And right, this is all, who knows who the hell made the list and why they made it that way. But the fact that I was able to get in that publication, when I kind of went down and tracked back how it got even brought up, it was a friend of mine who she was on my podcast. I was on her podcast, and she threw my name out to this, publication. They ended up listening to it, and their staff ended up rating, the top podcast. So stuff like that. If I didn't have that individual relationship and made deposits into her life and built rapport and a relationship with her, then who knows? I wouldn't have been rated on that, top 26 podcasts to listen to in 2016 at number 9. So that was humbling and cool, and at the same time, it was intentional. I've really looked for. I always think of like, who are the allied resources in my space that I can really add value to, and add value in a way that if I get anything in return, great. If I don't, doesn't matter. I'm still going to try and find ways of making as many deposits as I can on a daily basis. And I think that just is like marketing 101 is, if you add enough value, whatever you're hoping will happen will eventually happen. Now, it may not equate to dollars, but at the end of the day, it will equate to relationships. It will equate to, experiences. And 99% of the time, it will full circle come back in some opportunity in some way, shape, or form. So I always just go with the value approach and like, how can I add as much value to this individual organization or mission? And when I do that, it's always seemed to kind of pay off.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I look back and when you first hear that advice to just go out there and add value, a lot of people, if they have got a bit of a scarcity mentality or they're thinking, well, how am I going to get it? I mean, there's not enough hours in the day. Time and time again, I mean, speaking with you, speaking with others, it's almost a no-fail value proposition. You cannot fail. When you're going out there adding value, you will win every single time. It may take a week, it may take a month, it may take a year or more, but it's going to come back. And I would even argue that it's going to come back monetarily in spades. I mean, it's just going to massively pay off every time that I've gone out there and made it my mission to just give and give and give and add as much value as I can. Yeah, man, it always comes back. So hugely, hugely beneficial. And it sounds crazy, right? A lot of people are going to argue and say, no, that doesn't make any sense. You got to make sure you're valued for your time and all this. But at the end of the day, if you're seen as that sort of fiduciary or that trusted advisor that people can count on, I mean, your name's going to spread. People are going to pass on your advice and hook you up with other people. So
the value piece, I think, too, going back to time, as we all know, right? Time is the most valuable resource on earth. It's not something that we get back every day. And the ways that I've found to add the most value in someone's life is to actually give them more time back. And so, some of my greatest mentors and people, I've lost some of my own time, let's say, but at the end of the day, whether I was able to, do this project for them or connect them with this individual or whatever, if we were to go down to the common denominator of really what did I give them? Maybe a relationship. It may have been a resource or a tool or this or that. Essentially, I gave them leverage, which equated to time. And people appreciate that. And so anytime you have the opportunity to give someone back more time, whether that's a product offering through your service or a resource or a consultation or whatever it may be, always think about like, how can you give someone more time? And if you can tie that into your service or product or community or your, mission or message, whatever it may be, people will resonate with that on a very, very strong level.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's pure gold, pure gold. So what does the future hold for you? What's next essentially in Maddie's world?
Well, right now we're always looking for ways we can add more value, right? So
there you go.
We are, our team is working a lot on our mission and message right now is to teach people how to invest in real estate to generate wealth that essentially allows them the freedom and flexibility to spend their entire time and focus in the area that they're most passionate about.
Cool.
So that's where we're generating a lot of our efforts towards right now is growing the online real estate investing community and teaching people how to generate wealth through real estate investing and how they can use that wealth to go and have a bigger and better and more, influential impact in the areas that they're super passionate about. Now, if that happens to be real estate investing in the community, it's great. We'll teach you how to do that. But essentially, most people, they want money because of the feeling that it's essentially going to provide them. And the feeling might be happiness. The feeling might be, I'm free. I can do whatever I want. I'm flexible to do whatever I want. So we are teaching people to at least think about the idea that, going out and achieving money, one, is not a bad thing, because essentially it gives you more opportunity to go and have a greater impact in the world.
Yeah.
And but you got to do it intentionally, and to do it intentionally where, one, the asset is going to pay you an income, and two, it generates long-term wealth for you and your family. It doesn't have the ability to go down to zero like a stock or something like that. So we're spending a lot of time on that, and just looking to empower individuals on their journey of, essentially building wealth and moving much far beyond what they would have ever imagined financially, and what they could do in the, opportunities around them for the people around them.
Right on. Excellent. So essentially using like the real estate and the real estate investing is almost like a diving board platform. So you've got this stability and this foundation for which you can build your other dreams and your other goals from. Is that sort of what I'm hearing?
Yeah. I mean, essentially I look at, real estate as it's a retirement class. Like people will go, oh, I'm going to invest in mutual funds, or I'm going to invest in my Roth IRA, or, 401k, or the stock market, whatever it may be. I look at real estate investing as being pretty much the safest asset class for building long-term sustainable wealth that will not only, just for example, let's say you bought one rental property for the next 10 years and it was on average $100,000 and it paid you an income of $1,000. Well, in 10 years, or let's just say in 20 years, 20 years, you have 10 rental properties worth $100,000. You have $1 million in equity. You also have 10 properties that are paid off that are paying you $1,000 a month. So you have $10,000 a month coming in passive income. Yeah. And you have the ability to, write some of those off for taxes, and there's all kinds of benefits from it. And then based on that, if your living expenses were, say, $5,000 or $10,000 a month, your passive income is covering your entire lifestyle. Yeah. And what would that look like? Well, that's ultimate freedom, right? So if you want to go up to Mexico or go hang out in Whistler for a month or 2 months at a time, and you know that everything's covered because you're free. So you are essentially creating a space now where you, one, have $1 million in equity. You also have a monthly income, and you have the space and the time and the flexibility to go do whatever you want. Yeah. Spend your time wherever you want. That's ultimate freedom to me. So that's what we're trying to say, teach people to get in the mentality of, if you did one thing and you utilize this vehicle of real estate to achieve financial freedom, where would you spend your time? What impact could you have in the areas that you're passionate about? And that's the kind of approach we're looking at real estate investing for anybody that's either passionate about real estate or not passionate about real estate. Right. But by understanding this stuff, it's extremely valuable, one, for the individual, and two, for their family. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So where can people go to learn more about not only that real estate investing side of things and the offerings that you're putting out there, but also about you and your message? Yeah, so obviously on Facebook or Instagram, I'm always active on those two platforms pretty much the most of the time, which is just my name, Matty, Matty, Aitchison, Aitchison, or go to I'm sending my email, matt@aitchison.com, or you can email me, matt@mattaitchison.com. Perfect. I'll make sure to link all of those up in the show notes. Matty, my friend, it's so good to talk to you again. I mean, just such great wisdom, such great insight. I love your take on authenticity and providing value. I mean, it's pretty much everything that we try and talk about here on the Modern Marketing Podcast. So really appreciate you spending your time with us. Again, that time, that most valuable resource. So it means a lot. Greatly appreciate it. Thanks so much for being here. Love the show. Love what you're up to, Adam. Thanks, man. Thanks, buddy. All right. I will, if I can find the stop.